Well, welcome to the 700 Club. For today's top headlines, let's go over to the CBN News Desk.
Gordon, an early spring snowstorm is hitting millions of Americans in parts of the Midwest. Multiple accidents have been reported, with some roads impassable and thousands without power. Gary Lane has the story.
It feels more like late January than mid-April as another bomb cyclone strikes millions of Americans. A bomb cyclone is when cold air meets warm air and brings freezing temperatures, high winds, and heavy snow. This one brought up to 30 inches of snow to parts of the Midwest, 70-mile-per-hour winds, and travel chaos from Colorado to Texas, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Minnesota, and the Dakotas. That's the same region of the country that was hit by a bomb cyclone 1 month ago. And driving conditions?
The roads are terrible.
In many parts of the Midwest, road conditions remain life-threatening and hazardous. At one point on Thursday, at least 500 crashes were reported on roads and highways in Minnesota. Truckers transporting consumer goods and agricultural products to market were stranded.
With snow and ice and the wind blowing, it's quite an experience. Been kind of rough with the rolling blackout because the truck stop has been shut down basically. We can't get in to get any food or anything, but we have plenty with us. We were well prepared.
Thousands of flights were canceled throughout the region, and at least 25,000 homes were without power in parts of Minnesota. In Nebraska, where people are still recovering from late winter floods.
Instead of Nebraska strong, it should be Nebraska tired.
The heavy snowfall hasn't prevented Brad Wilkins from operating his feed and grain business.
Our producers that are out there are certainly putting in, 18, 20 hours a day because when weather's like this, you have to be out there checking those mama cows.
Just 1 month ago, Nebraskans suffered their worst flood in recorded history.
This feels a little bit like Groundhog's Day. A couple weeks ago, we had about the same situation. And the ground was not thawed out then, and of course that created flooding situations. Although the water's gone down now, the infrastructure in our counties, Brown, Rock counties, are still really compromised.
Wilkins is concerned for his fellow farmers who are stressed and overburdened financially, mentally, and physically from devastating loss and hardship. He urges them to seek help from a pastor or trusted friends.
Our faith communities or whatever, we just need to, we're all in this together and we'll get through it together.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
As we've been telling you, health care is emerging as the first major campaign issue of the 2020 election. Republicans and even some Democrats are pushing back against Bernie Sanders' plans to eliminate private health insurance in favor of a government-run program. CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson brings us this look at the backlash against Medicare for All.
Polls show Senator Bernie Sanders as the early leader among Democrat presidential candidates. And now that his big Medicare for All plan is out, Sanders' primary opponents are either fighting it or trying to get a piece of the action. Bernie's big pitch.
Together, we are going to end the international embarrassment of the United States of America, our great country, being the only major nation on earth not to guarantee health care to all as a right.
Is setting the stage for a 2020 drama.
I don't agree with Senator Sanders' the single-payer approach.
While some Democrats are backing away from Medicare for All.
It could be a possibility in the future.
Others are embracing it.
Healthcare must be a right, not a privilege.
Kirsten Gillibrand is one of 4 Senate Democrats running for president who backs the idea.
This has to become the next social safety net. It has to become something that is there for you no matter what.
That safety net could prove dangerously expensive. Independent estimates put the plan costing anywhere from $25 to $35 trillion over just 10 years.
That price is so steep that even left-leaning analysts are quietly admitting that the tax burden is virtually certain to land on the middle class.
Majority Leader Mitch McConnell could bring the bill to the Senate floor to make a point.
It might be interesting to put a Medicare for All plan on the floor for a vote, see where Democrats really stand.
Republicans like North Dakota's Kevin Kramer say a vote would showcase divisions among Democrats.
They will quickly gravitate back closer to the middle where reality exists.
Under the plan, some 180 million Americans would see their private health insurance replaced with a public plan.
What you end up with is you don't have Medicare for all. You have a bunch of people that have inferior or no coverage.
The White House says Republicans are working on realistic solutions. President Trump says a really great health care plan will be ready right after the 2020 election.
I personally think there's some risk in that approach.
Indiana Republican Mike Braun says his party has to come up with a fix for a basket case health care system.
We've got to be unveiling it and building it into 2020. And maybe the formal presentation can be after 2020.
Medicare for All is shaping up to be the Obamacare of 2020. Meanwhile, McConnell says the Republican plan isn't ready for prime time. The GOP may want to consider changing their timetable to seize an opportunity, especially with Democrats currently divided on how to fix health care. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Abortions will be banned in Ohio after an unborn baby's heartbeat is detected. Governor Mike DeWine signed the fetal heartbeat bill into law Thursday. It's a victory pro-life groups have wanted for a long time, but the American Civil Liberties Union of Ohio says it's preparing a constitutional challenge to the law on behalf of 4 abortion clinics in the state. The president of Ohio Right to Life says the heartbeat bill is the next incremental step in their strategy to overturn Roe v. Wade, the 1973 Supreme Court decision which legalized abortion nationwide. A Trump administration policy restricting military service for transgender people takes effect today. The policy requires incoming service members to live and serve according to their biological sex. It ends the practice of allowing gender transition surgeries for those already in service and bars people who've had the surgery or hormone treatment for gender transition from joining up. The policy exempts current transgender military personnel and those in the process of transitioning. The new rules reverse an Obama-era policy of allowing transgenders to serve openly. Some good news for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. His Likud party actually gained a seat in the Knesset in Tuesday's election. Likud and its allies now have a solid 65-55 majority in the Israeli parliament. Leaders in Israel's space industry hope to try again to land a spacecraft on the moon. Their first lunar probe crashed just miles away from its goal of putting down on the moon's surface. Chris Mitchell brings us the story from Israel's Space Center.
Before the final descent of the spacecraft, these Israeli pioneers hoped for success.
8.5 years in the making, so many engineers, both in SpaceIL, Israel Aerospace Industries, donors, supporters, volunteers, and it's all coming down to this. This baby here is going to get to the surface of the moon. The only question is, in how many pieces?
SpaceIL's major donor, Morris Kahn, explained the name of the spacecraft.
Bereshit is the first word in our Bible. It is in the beginning. And I think that for us, this is the beginning. And for SpaceIL and for the Israel aircraft industry, this is the beginning.
We have lost communication with the spacecraft.
But on the verge of history, Israel's spacecraft, Bereshit, fell just short.
It seems that a failure in our inertial measurement unit caused a chain of events in the spacecraft avionics, which cut off the engines and caused us to lose the mission.
The attempted moon landing began as a dream by 3 Israeli engineers 8.5 years ago. Despite the failure, it still represents the epitome of Israel as the startup nation.
It's a story that shows a lot about Israel, how 3 young engineers sitting in a bar can, just pull an entire country after them and make this a reality.
They want to inspire the next generation.
We've met more than 1 million kids in Israel and around the world and gave them the message that, science and technology can be fun, can be cool.
Israel became only the 7th nation to put a spacecraft in lunar orbit and the first privately funded mission to the moon.
For a small country like Israel, for a small, even smaller company or association like SpaceIL, it's a huge achievement.
But my message is for the kids. This is hard. It is rocket science. Science and engineering is difficult. It doesn't always work the first time. But you have to pick yourself up and try again.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu encouraged the space team to go on.
If at first you don't succeed, you try again.
The spacecraft carried a nano copy of the Bible on board, and before its final descent, the spacecraft took a selfie with a banner that read, "Small country, big dreams." Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Israel Space Center.